Metropolitan Library System is inviting the community to celebrate Black History Month with an original dramatic performance by Rhythmically Speaking. We're going to learn a lot more about Rhythmically Speaking and Ebony Voices. Here to tell us all about this and more. This will be a fun conversation. Dewey Williams, very nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Thanks for stopping by. We certainly appreciate that. Let's start with Rhythmically Speaking and Ebony Voices. Tell me about this program.
Well, Rhythmically Speaking goes back probably about 15 to 16 years or more, and it originated actually through Oklahoma Children's Theater. And one day Lynn Adams asked if some of us could do something for Black History Month. And that was when we put together our first show, which was called Tales from the Quilt, A Western Adventure. Wow. And we've just continued since then, every year, doing 1 to 2 shows. Eventually, the Metropolitan Library System asked us to do a performance for one of the neighborhood arts tours. And so now regularly we do neighborhood arts, and we also do an original script each February, which is quite an honor because I'm allowed to choose the subject, and the library has infinite trust in what we do, and so they see the show when the public sees the show.
Wow, that's unusual and very cool, right?
And very cool.
Giving you that editorial license to, hey, here's a production and here's a storyline. Before we get into Mrs. Hannah Atkins, the group started small, right? But now there's a lot more members.
The group started small. There were 4 original members.
And you were one of those, right?
And I was one of those 4 original members, along with Sandra McMillan, Al Bostic, and Jeruba Lambeth. And the first script we wrote entirely in session together. We would meet and we'd say, let's work on this scene, and we'd talk about it, and we would develop our lines improvisationally, and Sandra would record them, would script them. So that's how the first script was developed. And since then, I've evolved into the researcher, scripter. So I'm still kind of a 2-finger typer. Every once in a while I can throw another finger in there, but the entire script is pecked out. I peck it out every time.
Well, it's oftentimes just as fast to go 2 fingers as a whole.
That's it, that's it.
This current production, if you will, Yes Indeedy by Mrs. Hannah Atkins. Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, Hannah Atkins and I both are from the traditional South. We're both from North Carolina. And so when I read the interview that was done with Hannah, it was actually about 3 years prior to her death. She was already living in Maryland.
She died in 2010.
She died in 2010. And throughout that interview, she would affirm her statements by saying, yes, indeedy. Yes,
Okay.
indeedy. And that's kind of a Southern flavor to it. So I wanted to hold on to that in developing the title. So that's why the title is Yes, Indeedy, Miss Hannah Atkins.
How did you pick her in the first place?
It actually was just a little spark from the previous year's show, which was the story of Edwards, W.J. Edwards, and the W.J. Edwards Memorial Hospital, which was the first African-American hospital in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And that hospital came about because Mrs. Edwards became ill, and they were very wealthy people at that time, but they were advised to take her out of the state to a Mayo Clinic because that was where she would get the best treatment. And she and her husband decided at that time that if they, as wealthy African Americans, couldn't feel confident in getting the best services, that they knew that there was a great part of the population,
others had to feel exactly the same way.
The same way. So with approximately $400,000 from their pockets, they built the Edwards Memorial Hospital. The connection being that Hannah would come to Oklahoma City because her husband, Charles Atkins, would come to Oklahoma City to work at Edwards Memorial Hospital. And so that kind of sparked that interest in the Atkins family. And the decision to do Hannah really meant that it had to be, ultimately it had to be Ebony Voices. And Ebony Voices are the women of Rhythmically Speaking. And we do pieces where we're singing in a cappella, and we're doing somewhat of a storytelling format from a womanly perspective. So it was a challenge to just do Hannah and not do Dr. Charles Atkins as well, because both of them made substantial contributions to Oklahoma in general, African Americans, as well as the state in general.
Truly helping out their community.
Absolutely.
You mentioned your connection with the area of Winston-Salem and Durham. What did you find when you went back there? You spoke with some of the people who knew Hannah Atkins.
I was able to make the connections to be able to interview Hannah's older brother, who is about 94 years old now, and he's a retired physician. And also to speak with her youngest sister, Gloria, who still lives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They, of course, were able to give me the kind of glue, the personal insight, because we're building a character that we have to condense. And how do we really bring about the essence of who that person is, wrapped with all of that very important information?
Well, that is important, because as you're building this character 2 fingers at a time, building the script, getting the context, getting the perspective from who you spoke with, that's pretty important.
I think that came about in speaking with them, and definitely in speaking with Hannah. Had a group of middle school age students who really followed her, and she really mentored. And one of the outstanding ones was Vicki Miles LaGrange. So I was able to spend some time talking with, Judge Vicki Miles LaGrange.
Your Honor.
Your Honor. And she was able to tell me the stories, and it became very conversational. It becomes, girl, my mama was so strict on me, but anytime that Hannah would call and ask if Vicki could go with her to an event or participate in something, Miss Miles would let her go.
Doors were opened.
The doors were open.
Very cool. We're talking with Dewey Williams, one of the founding members of Rhythmically Speaking and Ebony Voices. As we mentioned, the Metropolitan Library System, we have a full screen graphic that will go with this that says when you can find those performances. There, you see it right there. It runs through February 28th. How's it gone so far?
It's gone great. We just came off of a 5-day break to do a performance at War Acres Library, and it was a full house. And we absolutely got the stamp of approval after the show, realizing that Hannah's son, Edmund, his wife, was here for that performance.
Great. And
she was able to come to us after the show and say, you really hit the essence of who Hannah was. And so that was the ultimate stamp, because when you're doing the kind of material that we're doing, it's always possible that you're going to miss the mark, or that there's going to be a family member in the house that's going to catch you. And that's when the cast always goes to Miss Dewey, and I'm like, did I miss it? But we didn't. We hit the essence of who Hannah was.
That's a great stamp of approval, and congratulations. Moving forward, what's next for you and your group? Where can we find you guys?
We obviously have we have probably about 8 or 9 more performances of the Hannah Atkins show. And then we've already had requests. For example, the Douglas High School class of 1966 has already requested a performance for their class reunion. We've been invited also to go to Lawton to take the same show.
Take the show on the road.
Take the show on the road. And in the meantime, of course, we're beginning to prepare for the Summer Neighborhood Arts Tour, which the theme for the summer is the race. And we'll be doing a script that is a compilation of 3 myths of races. The tortoise and the hare, but the ultimate race was really when the rabbit challenges the hedgehogs. And the hedgehogs, being slow-moving animals, we assume that they're going to lose, but they use their heads, and they don't lose. So we have those pieces in the works.
Creative people always churning out new content. That's very cool. Dewey Williams, I've enjoyed the conversation. Great to meet you. Best of luck with the rest of this and your upcoming performances.
And thank you.
I don't know if I can shoulder the responsibility.